Hello, hello, hello. It's me. It's been a long time. I haven't made a video in months, so I'm really excited. I'm nervous. I'm feeling a little emotional about this one, but I hope that you guys have been happy and healthy. This has been the craziest year ever, so I hope that you're well. I left LA after 3 years. I'm currently at my family's house in Charlotte and just awaiting my next move. That's me. I hope you're good. There are a couple reasons why I wanted to make this video. As you can see, we are going to talk about why I am pro-Black woman unapologetically. So the first reason why I wanted to make this video is that Meg Thee Stallion got on IG Live last week and told the world that Tory Lanez shot her. Secondly, the 100-year anniversary of white women's suffrage just passed. And like I mentioned, this feels like a it's my life. It's a lot of Black women's lives. So I'm making this video because I'm at a place in my life where I am no longer gaslighting myself about the experiences that I've had, and I for damn sure am not allowing other people to gaslight me about the racial abuse that I've experienced in dating. And I just want to connect the dots between Black women, intimacy, and violence. So this video is not meant to hate or ridicule anyone. It's literally just meant to lay out the connections between Black women, intimacy, and violence, and for me to bring some of my lived experiences to that, which what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But I also wish that I had never had any of these experiences to even reference. So I will be using some notes. There's a lot of research behind this. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. But before we get into it, there will be, again, talking about abuse. Racial slurs will be in this video. If that makes you uncomfortable, well, imagine how uncomfortable that makes me and the other Black women who have dealt with experiencing that. So let's just jump in. We are beginning this video with Megan Thee Stallion, who got shot by Tory Lanez. Again, she revealed that on Instagram after many people suspected or wanted to say that she hadn't gotten shot. She looks too happy. She's out here living her life. If she had gotten shot, she wouldn't be doing any of those things. So we have a Black woman who had to publicly put herself out there and talk about a traumatic experience because a bunch of people didn't believe her. And the craziest thing about this, I lived in LA for 3 years, so seeing people's first reactions to the report, which happened earlier this month now, the first responses that I saw on social media were a lot of, well, why didn't she report Tory immediately when it happened? I can tell you, as someone who has seen many a car chase, helicopter chase, stop and frisk in Los Angeles by LAPD, they are aggressive. They are extremely aggressive. And the arrest video where you see Meg on the ground, Tory on the ground, and her friend Kelsey on the ground, it shows just how aggressive they are. So in her IG Live, she talks about how she was nervous about the police further, hurting her or hurting Tory or her friend. She didn't want to make them any more aggressive than what they already had been. Just last month, I was woken up by a very, very aggressive stop that happened in front of my apartment. It was maybe 1 o'clock in the morning. Me and a roommate were awoken by the same thing, and I completely empathize with Meg's reasoning. That's just the reality of the situation. Even when you are a victim with police violence and state violence as a Black person, you have to be wary of calling the police for help, because often you are not helped. There's a lot of talk then, now publicly, you know, the past couple months, we've been talking about Black Lives Matter. The movement for the first time in history is seen in a positive light, whereas a couple years ago, it really polled negatively amongst the public. There was a misunderstanding of what that meant, but now we see a lot of people subscribing to the movement, which in a lot of ways is great and in some ways is very performative. But overall, when we speak about police violence against Black people in this country, it overwhelmingly centers Black men. And Callie Nicole Gross, who wrote African American Women, Mass Incarceration and the Politics of Protection, which was published in the Journal of American History, states, if the issue of Black female incarceration is raised, it is usually as a tangible afterthought in discussions about the carceral experiences of Black men, and even then the role of interracial gender violence is rarely discussed. Culturally, we see this. We see this with the way Breonna Taylor has been made into a meme, made into clickbait, and there are people who are actively profiting off of her death with t-shirts, with events, versus the coverage that you see with Elijah McClain and Ahmaud Arbery. Now, all of these deaths were completely preventable, are tragedies, and I want all Black death to stop in this country and in the world. However, there is this clear difference in media and in culture, just society as a whole, where we are giving more respect to the Black male victims of police violence and state violence than we do Black women. Gross's report also uses examples such as Marissa Alexander. She was incarcerated for 3 years, but sentenced to 20 for firing a warning shot during a confrontation with her estranged, abused husband, who she had a restraining order against. Gross's report also notes, or kind of lays out, a contrast between Marissa's story and the story of George Zimmerman, who successfully used the stand your ground defense after taking the life of Trayvon Martin, an unarmed Black teenager, in 2012. But when Black women are actual victims of abuse, they're punished. Marissa Alexander is not the only case where we see that. We also have stories of Black women like Katina Curley, Latoya Ramseur, Crystal Kaiser, and Centoya Brown, who were also incarcerated for defending themselves from abuse. So, it points to a major flaw, not just in our judicial system and in our culture, but we have to recognize that there is a history of the law actually being written in a way that it almost rewards people for abusing Black women, and it shields the perpetrators of that abuse. So an example that Gross uses in her report as well is Virginia's December 1662 decree, which was part of their slave law. It said that the children of enslaved Africans and Englishmen, i.e. mixed-race children, would be held bond or free according to the condition of the mother, meaning that if the mom were a free woman, the child would be free. If the mom were a slave, the child would be a slave. Essentially, there would be no penalty for slave owners who raped Black women. Instead, they would see huge profits through rape, leading to countless rapes and instances of forced breeding. I mean, if you can get away with raping your slave, getting her pregnant, and her having more children, that's more free labor. So in Virginia and many states in the US at that time, slave owners were rewarded for abusing Black women. That has not really changed. So people believe that as you become more affluent, more famous, the idea is that people care more. But no, you have people like Megan Thee Stallion. You have people like Rihanna. Do we remember the coverage that, or the way that her abuse by Chris Brown was covered? There was always this question of, oh, well, maybe she provoked him in some way. I remember seeing a report that suggested she had given him herpes, and that's why he assaulted her. Or that she had hit him first, and that's why he assaulted her. So making Black women into the reason why they are abused, blaming them for their own abuse. That is something that we do culturally all of the time, and we see that in the situation with Megan Thee Stallion. The questions are currently, what did she do to set off Tory Lanez? It's completely ridiculous, it's disgusting, and it makes me sick. As a contrast, you see high-profile non-Black celebrities like Kim K, Chloe K, Kylie Jenner, Iggy Azalea. Gosh, when things happen to them, they're believed. No one questions, why did that happen? Did you cause that to happen? And they get to cosplay as Black women and profit off of it.
Because Chili...
So again, there's this idea that Black women are unprotected. We simply don't have protection even among Black men, and especially not among white men, and not even white women. Even though there's this huge trend of being an ally, it's just not, we just don't have the same level of protection. So that goes also for not just Black women in America. Black women around the world experience this phenomenon, unfortunately, as well. But in America specifically, there's 14% of the US population is Black. I believe the population is something like 330 million people, or at least it was 2 years ago. Yet, 40% of the victims of human trafficking are Black. That was found in a study by the Urban Institute. They also found that traffickers who they interviewed overwhelmingly believed that trafficking white women would make them more money, but trafficking Black women would land them less jail time if caught. Yet traffickers were found to be selling their victims to affluent and highly regarded Caucasian men. Nothing new. I think we've all kind of heard that story, whether you've been cognizant of it or not. So the history, it's continuing, it's never stopped. In a report that CNN put out a couple years ago, missing white children receive far more media coverage than missing Black and brown children, despite higher rates of missing children among communities of color. Again, plays into the fact that Black women, especially, are unprotected in this society, are more likely to be victims of human traffickers, of sexual exploitation, and none of it is coincidental. All of it has been allowed forever. Even within consensual sex or the performance of consensual sex, i.e. porn, the white gaze fixates on Black women. While we think of the American South as being more racist than other parts of the country, Pornhub revealed in 2016 that their ebony and Black categories were the most viewed in states such as Mississippi, Louisiana, Georgia, and Delaware. Mind you, these are majority white states. Mississippi has a white population, of 59%, Louisiana 62.8%, Georgia 58.3%, and Delaware 68.9%. Yet, when it comes to serious relationships, Black women are the only race of women who experience exclusion from both Black and non-Black men. Now, this is where this becomes really fun, and I get to reference my own dating experiences. I mean, I just can't begin to tell you guys how much that just rings true for me. I have dated mostly non-Black men in my life. I've grown up in mostly white neighborhoods, gone to majority white schools all of my life. Environment, there weren't many choices, so I have dated a lot of non-Black men. However, I have also dated Black men and experienced stereotypes. Not so much racial abuse. I would say the bulk of the racial abuse that I've experienced in dating has primarily come from non-Black men. So let's get into my horrible memories. My first experience with this, I was 15 years old. This was my first boyfriend who was white. I was totally not allowed to date at the time, but clearly being a rebellious teenager decided that I was gonna do it anyways. And so my white boyfriend had told his parents about me. We'd been dating at this point for a while, maybe close to a year, and they told him that they didn't want him to date a nigger. We ended up staying together until I was 17, and fun story, his parents a year later did come to our junior prom photos that we took. It was my junior prom, his senior prom. Yeah, so his parents came, you know, having said what they said, and they smiled in me and my parents' faces, and yeah. Also, his dad worked for Billy Graham, so I didn't know much about evangelicals at that time. I really should have just listened to my parents, but that was my first dating experience, getting called a nigger by adults. Probably the next experience that was not as bad, but still pretty bad, came when I was a sophomore in college, and I went to go visit my family in London, which I did a lot from when I was like 13. So I was staying at a hotel for a week. I think I stayed at the Park Plaza Sherlock Holmes in the city center, just because I wanted to have some freedom and explore and have some me time. And I ended up meeting a Polish guy on Tinder, and he was very sweet initially, you know, great couple days that had with him, whatever. Anyways, in a conversation after we had met, this is like way after, just kind of one of those like, oh, how are you doing conversations that you have with people that you date. Yeah, he mentioned that he would never date me seriously because I'm Black. Like, in explicit terms, he was just like, I would never be in a relationship with you because you're Black. So, yeah. Another experience that happened earlier this year, I went on one date with a Lebanese guy in LA, and he just kept trying to tell me that he hadn't dated a Black woman before, but instead of saying it, he would just say, I've never dated, and just make these weird hand gestures, and I was like, a Black woman? Yeah. It was a very short date. Very, very short. And most recently, as last week, I was dating a Mexican guy, and he decided that it would be a good idea, for whatever reason, to fetishize my black insert body part here. I'm just gonna let your imagination run with that one. And I called him on it, explained that that really made me uncomfortable, asked him to not do that again. He initially apologized, but as he I guess wanted to know why, I thought that was great. Could have been a learning lesson, but no. Completely gaslit me and told me that I was overreacting and that I was turning it into something that it didn't need to be. I took it too literally, which I don't know how I could have taken it any more literal than it was. Anyways. So yeah. So I have about 10 years of racial abuse in my dating life to reference, and those are just the most pronounced examples that I've given you. There are just so many other things that have happened that traumatized the hell out of me. I don't know how else to explain that. And what I'll get from a lot of my non-black friends who, you know, I love them, they're well-meaning, but it's a lot of like, well, maybe you're just dating like the wrong guys. Like you're just not good at choosing them, which is just not. You don't know that someone has certain biases until they literally show you that they have certain biases. So there's no way for me to just know. There's no way. But same kind of innocent, but you know, statements come from my black family, who it completely goes over their head the role that colorism and sizeism affects dating for black women like me. I mean, I just cannot begin to tell you guys how many times men have wanted to play house with me. They, you know, wanted to promise me the earth, the moon, the stars, spend all this time with me, know so much about me, but they just wouldn't be able to utter to their family that they're dating me. Yet no one wants to talk about how racism affects dating for black women. I can't tell you how many times I have played house with non-black men, and they've even introduced me to their families, sometimes their entire family, and you know, again, you think like, wow, this is great, this person really cares about me, and weeks or months later, they're dating someone who is white passing, mixed, or white. Yeah, so this is where I meant to say relationship. Like after they say, oh, I can't, I'm not ready to be in a relationship, like I'm not looking for a relationship right now, but they want to know like every last detail about my life and want to have access to me like whenever they want to have access to me and like do all the relationship things. But then they end up in a relationship with a non-black woman who's lighter in complexion than me. This is just the facts. These are just the facts. It's happened more than once. Just the facts. Yet, no one wants to talk about how colorism affects dating. I'll give you a solid example, actually. I dated a Mexican guy for a couple months last year. Again, I meant to say relationship. Was in a relationship with this man. And on our way to meeting his parents, I just brought up to him like, well, how many men in your family are with women who have a darker complexion than they do? And he said, none of them. And I was like, okay. Spidey senses kind of told me that that was going to be a very short relationship. There were a couple reasons why. But yeah, no one wants to talk about how colorism plays a role in dating for black women. They'll sleep with you, they'll date you for a little bit, but they're not gonna have like a serious relationship with you because that's not what you're for. You're just for fun. You're just for a moment. You're just for a fetish. That's it. So, this is clearly not all people. I'm not speaking to anyone. I'm only speaking to my experiences. That's the only thing that I can do. I'm not saying that this is all men. I'm saying that these are the experiences that I've had in dating. Just to be completely clear with that. Another thing, sizeism, where that comes into play. I get so often like, oh, your curves, I love them, da da da. Men of all races say that to me. But I didn't grow up getting to see women who looked like me. And not on TV, not in mainstream media, not, I wasn't the thing. And wearing shorts, anything tight, that was like, it was a huge thing. I was always told that I needed to cover up parts of my body. That was the messaging that I received a lot of the time. But no one wants to talk about the role that sizeism plays in dating for Black women. So yeah, I mean, it's been a long road.
No, it's been a long fight. It's been a long fight, and I just had to have a warrior spirit. And
Again, these are experiences that I wish I had never had in dating, and I mean, as a result, it is extremely difficult for me to date feeling like, does this person actually like me, or am I a fetish to them? Is this just a moment to them? Are they enjoying their proximity to Blackness and Black culture? Is that why they're dating me? Rarely have I ever, and I mean, I still kind of question, like, have I ever really dated someone who likes me for me? So 10 years of dating, that's where I'm at, unfortunately. You can donate to my therapy fund. I would highly appreciate it. But yeah, now that we've kind of gone through the non-Black men, I can reference some of the experiences I've had with Black men too, who would not give me a second look, would not spit on me if I'm on fire, just simply are not interested. And that's not just in America. I mean, I feel like I can count on both of my hands the number of times where I've been like pursued by Black men just in general in dating. And again, that goes back to this research that Black women are the only group of women who are rejected by both Black and non-Black men because of the stronghold of these stereotypes of us being aggressive or like hypersexual or angry, ghetto, the baby mama stereotypes. All of these things play into dating for Black women. They really affect who's checking for us. And I 100% can say that Black men have looked me in my face and said, well, you're just too independent. You're too outspoken. And that's been on multiple occasions. So you may say, well, you're only limiting yourself to this type of man. No, I love all men. I do not discriminate when it comes to men. I love all races of men, but there are things that make dating very difficult for me as a Black woman. It's just the fact. There is, of course, a cultural phenomenon that we can talk about in terms of Black men not being interested in or being less interested in Black women. There are a lot of Black people who marry Black people. That's not what I'm trying to say, but I am saying that there is a cultural phenomenon that sees Black men not date Black women because they're not white enough. They date white women, white passing women, or mixed women because it signals a higher status. We can think of Gold Digger by Kanye West and Jamie Foxx, where Kanye says, and when he get on, he'll leave your ass for a white girl. That is the cultural phenomenon. That is why you see so many celebrity Black men, rich Black men, highly educated Black men only dating light-skinned, white-passing, mixed, or white women. It's simply not a coincidence. It's a cultural phenomenon. In Kanye's case, though, the phenomenon feels really gross to me because not only, you know, I'm not gonna admonish anyone for dating outside of their race. Clearly, most of the men that I've dated are non-Black. But I absolutely will say that it is disgusting to me when someone is with someone solely because they feel that being with them brings them something. Like, if you're dating someone other than them, stop dating them. That's not a genuine relationship. That's a relationship based off exploitation. So the when he get on, you know, whether that's money, more education, or fame, deciding that you've made it and now you don't need Black women anymore, that's disgusting. That's disgusting to me. Hopefully that's disgusting to everyone, because you're simply not dating that person because you actually like them. You're dating them because of what being with them might bring you. And in Kanye's case, we see his wife also appropriating Black culture, cosplaying as a Black woman daily for years, and profiting off of it. So it is disgusting to me. I will say that. I guess that is one of my critiques. I know I said I wouldn't ridicule anyone, but it's hard to not. And please do not come in my comments saying that Kim is half Armenian, so she can do that. She is a white woman. Spare me, please. All right. So the research for that we want to get into now, because it's not a coincidence. Again, this research was conducted by Sarah Adienke-Skold, a doctoral candidate in the Department of Sociology at the University of Pennsylvania. And her studies revealed that stereotypes of Black women as emasculating, angry, too strong, or too independent are rampant, so much so that both Black and non-Black men use the stereotypes or tropes that are popular in our society to justify why they don't date Black women. Now, let's get into some of those tropes and stereotypes. Historically, these include the sapphire stereotype, characterizing Black women as strong, masculine workhorses who labored with Black men in the fields, whose aggressive and overbearing demeanor drives away her children and partners. The Jezebel stereotype of Black women as hypersexual, in contrast to the demure Victorian lady, was also used to justify white slave owners raping their slaves and breeding them with other slaves, which we already discussed with the Virginia slave laws. And Virginia is not the only state. That was just the law of the land. Then there's the mammy archetype of a Black woman completely dedicated to caring for a white family, especially the children. And though the mammy is ultra feminine instead of hypersexual, she is still seen as undesirable by white and Black men because, wait for it, she is typically overweight. Medea, she's kind of a mixture of the sapphire and the mammy archetype, but fat phobia, like the depictions of Black women as overweight all the time, they really, it holds. So I meant to include here that it did not escape me that MTV depicted me using the welfare queen stereotype. And I know exactly which executive producer that came from, but I really will tell you that it just came from the top down. They're racist at MTV. When I did Ghosted, yes, they're racist. Racist, 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 racist. I don't know what else I should say though. And these caricatures are global. Brooke Newman, Associate Professor of History and the Interim Director of the Humanities Research Center at Virginia Commonwealth University, argues in her piece, The Long History Behind the Racist Attacks on Serena Williams, which was published in the Washington Post. She says in the late 18th and 19th century London, visual artists such as Isaac Cruikshank, James Gillray, Richard Newton, and Thomas Rowlandson focused public attention on the unsuitability of women of African ancestry, not only as sexual partners for British men, but also as free and equal imperial subjects. Caricaturists depicted African-descended women as simultaneously comical and frighteningly brutish, with jet black skin, voluptuous bodies, thick lips, and insatiable appetites. Black women, cartoonists suggested, posed a danger to the nation unless subject to white male control. Similarly, Newman states the Gollywog doll originated in an 1895 children's book by an Anglo-American illustrator, Florence Kate Upton, called The Adventures of Two Dutch Dolls. The Gollywog had a coal black skin, unruly hair, large lips, and leering white eyes and teeth, and it inspired caricatures of blackface minstrel performers throughout history. The Gollywog became associated with a number of now defunct 20th century consumer products, from English marmalade to Australian chocolate biscuits. People profiting off of Black women's disgusting depictions of Black women. Black women's pain, Black women's humiliation. It's an age-old phenomenon, and it continues to this day, unfortunately. So the history is long. I think I've made that pretty clear, and I'm gonna link all of these sources that you guys can read on your own time. Please don't fight with me in the comments about it. Literally, the research is there. But at the same time, this isn't to say that Black men aren't also subject to their own stereotypes. I mean, let's talk about the Mandingo stereotype. Now, there are many white girls following me who have decided to make the weird comment of like, I love black eyes, and like, I love big black dick. That comes from that stereotype that Black men have large penises. That sticks with us today. But we can kind of question how harmful that stereotype is versus the stereotypes that Black women are faced with. Not saying that it makes it better, but we can definitely question the harm that is done. Both of these are harmful though. Let's be real. Let me be clear. Both of them are harmful. Black men should not be desired just for their body parts. No one should be desired just for their genitals. People are people. They should be seen as full people, enjoyed as full people beyond their genitals. But anyways, another stereotype that Black men another stereotype that is still at play for Black men is Uncle Tom, a Black man who is simple-minded and compliant, but most essentially interested in the welfare of white people over that of other Black people. But within the stereotype attribution, it mainly happens with dark-skinned women and men. So we can see that with the public reception of the Williams sisters. I grew up watching the Williams sisters, loving them, feeling like, whoa, Black women with braids on the tennis court, and they were seen as ghetto. They were teased incessantly and abused incessantly. But we see a difference between how Venus, the more slender sister, was the attacks that she got, and Serena, the more muscular, curvy sister, and the attacks that she got. We even see a difference in those two people just because of sizeism, and yeah. We also see that it's not always white people or other people of color who are doing the attacking. In Serena Williams' case, we saw a lot of Black men for years call her a man, say that she's undateable, that no Black men were checking for her. I'm pretty sure that Common treated her like crap as well. I wasn't there, but I Google it. And then after years of crap, putting up with that in the public, she finds love with a white man, Alexis Ohanian, who treats her like an absolute queen, celebrates her loudly and just all the time. And then you heard from Black men that, oh, she turned her back on her race because she married a white man who loves her for her. So you can't win. You can't win, apparently. So sharp contrast. There are still stereotypes that affect light-skinned Black women. Dark-skinned Black women have, and dark-skinned Black men, there are stereotypes that are definitely attributed to them, but same phenomenon with light-skinned women. And that was the tragic mulatta stereotype of a white passing Black woman, often depicted as mean, unsympathetic, yet sexually attractive, and determined to marry an unsuspecting, well-to-do white man. This stereotype still gets some play. I'm pretty sure it was depicted in one of the characters in Dear White People. I can't remember her name, but she's the light-skinned character. Now, I want to kind of create a bridge between those stereotypes and lived experiences and research. So, the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology conducted a study in 2010 to see how well people remembered Black women's faces. The study showed white participants a series of photos depicting men and women who were white or Black. Results suggest that Black women were more likely than Black men or white men and women to go unnoticed by others in a group or social situation. They examined whether Black women were also more likely to go unheard when contributing to a group conversation. In this study, participants overheard a conversation between 8 people, including 2 Black women, 2 Black men, 2 white women, and 2 white men. They found that participants were more likely to mix up comments made by the 2 Black female speakers, suggesting that they perceived the 2 Black women as relatively interchangeable. How often have we seen that one? Participants were also more likely to misattribute the Black female speaker's comments to other speakers in the group. Compared to Black men, and white women, comments made by Black women are more likely to go unheard when made to a largely white audience. Now, let's talk about the social media atmosphere. Let's talk about how Black influencers are less followed by their white peers. Let's talk about how their content gets less plays. Let's talk about how brands contact them less often. Do we still think it's a coincidence? How? How is it a coincidence? So, even in my own life, I wanted to kind of play that out for myself. And I do a lot of walking in the cities that I've lived in. I mean, except for this one right now. Charlotte is all about driving. But when I'm in Los Angeles, when I'm in Boston, New York, London, Paris, wherever, I do a lot of walking. And what I started to do is just not break my path for anyone. No matter who's like walking in my path, I just continue walking. So basically, I make the other person get out of my way. And sometimes I find that they don't. They walk into me, but I still do it. I do it to this day because it really helps me to see on like a psychological basis that I am not seen in society, which I already knew. Lived experience, again, I already knew, but testing it out is very interesting to me. I have been trained as a Black woman to get out of the way of other people. So in a way, what I'm doing is kind of like revolting against that. And non-Black people have been trained by society to not get out of my way. We see that with history. I mean, do you think a white man is really that concerned with getting out of my way after hundreds of years where he was allowed to exploit Black women legally? Let's be real. Let's be real. No. Anyways, but I really like doing that anyways because it helps me to practice. Also, there's a study that women apologize more often for like no reason, and it's really helping me to unlearn that as well. So those are two things that I think are really, really great for other Black women to start doing, just saying. Now I just kind of want to bring everything full circle. Because this idea of allyship has taken hold, and I found a lot of it is just very performative, even amongst the people that I know, and most of them used to at this point, used to call friends or used to date. There's a long history of white women not being allies. So we see that with the National American Women's Suffrage Association, which was an all-white group, continuously rejected Black membership and was led by the very racist Susan B. Anthony, who was basically like, fuck the Black people. And I don't know how else to express it. She simply did not care. Even as other white women within the organization urged her to accept Black women into the movement, she said, hell no. I'm not going to upset the Southern women who are too racist to even think about Black women as anything other than property. And that caused a lot of Black women like Ida B. Wells and Lucy Parsons to go out and do their own thing, start their own movements. And even within those movements, they lacked support from prominent Black men. So no support from prominent white women, let alone everyday white women. They were too racist. Prominent Black men were too sexist and too concerned with their proximity to whiteness to even spit on them if they were on fire. And they did find support with their, partners and brothers and fathers. So your everyday Black men were the supporters of Black women in suffrage. And I just want to point out that the 100-year anniversary is only in regard to white women's suffrage. Black women were attacked for trying to vote. Whether it was assault, whether it was racial abuse, we were not allowed to vote at that time. So I don't know what the anniversary for our suffrage would be, but it certainly was not last week. And Angela Davis makes that very clear in Women, Race, and Class. I think that that should be required reading for absolutely everyone on the face of this earth, because I learned more about history, about American history in general, not just in terms of like Black women, but I learned more about American history in that book than in college course, in a high school course, from one book. So Women, Race, and Class by Angela Davis, that's required reading as far as I'm concerned. I want to close this with a quote from Sarah Adienke Skold, who concludes, after presenting her research, "This lie or myth that it's all about you, the individual, and your agency simply is not true. Structures matter. The ways that governments make laws to marginalize or give power matters for people's life chances. It matters for their outcomes. It matters for love." I hope that you see that in this. And so many of my experiences show that. And I am someone who has privilege as a well-to-do Black woman, as an educated Black woman. So I can only imagine what it's like for people who are not in my position, how much harder it would be, how much more trauma they've had to deal with, and exploitation. And that's why I'm never gonna stop talking about being pro-Black woman. I'm never going to stop celebrating us. I'm never going to stop loving myself, regardless of the kind of treatment that I've received in situations where I just want to be loved, just like everyone else. We have a very human need for love. I don't feel like that makes me stupid for admitting that. I want to be loved as me, for me, not because of my Blackness, not because you think I'm exotic, not because of my body, just for me. And that's why I want to continue talking about this stuff. And as Monique would say, Black women, I love us. I love your Blackness. I love my Blackness. I easily could hate myself because that's what society wants. I have every reason to hate myself according to society. I have every reason to not find myself worthy of love, of respect. But here I am, finding myself worthy of all of it. And I want every Black woman who follows me, who knows me, who likes my blog, who likes anything that has to do with me, or, even doesn't like me, I don't care. I want every Black woman who comes in contact with me to understand that I'm a Black woman who's loving herself. Therefore, you should love yourself. So, I love us, and I love you, and I love me. So, keep on keeping on, Black women. I'm gonna be here for us. And if it's still confusing as to why it's absolutely necessary for me to be this pro-Black woman, then you'll never get it. And
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you something.
We don't care.
yeah. So thank you for watching this video. Again, my sources are linked below. If you're watching from Instagram, they will be linked in my highlight called Being a Black Woman. And yeah, keep shining, keep being fabulous, keep loving your blackness, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.